All right, everyone. Yesterday there was a headline that caught my attention because it's like the perfect example of yellow journalism. Link in the description, of course. It's Trump at the sort of commemoration of the end of World War One. He's standing there with Macron and Merkel and all the others commemorating the end of the so-called Great War, although it's, wars do not make one great, I suppose. And he smiled at Putin. Putin arrived and he sort of gave a half grin to him. This obviously was front page news, and they're like, Trump smiles at Putin, nation outraged. Now, I was just thinking about the silliness, really, of some of these groups, and the fact that they try to hide behind the First Amendment to spew what amounts to tabloid gossip is really, really funny. It's like, of course, they have the right to report that way. Nobody disputes that. They're not under attack, by the way. The government's not saying, hey, if you say things that we find are wrong, you should get, jailed or fined or something. Nobody's saying that. But for them to then turn around and say if you criticize that reporting as the tabloid fucking gossip swill bullshit that it really is, that somehow you're endangering the First Amendment, you're against press freedom as though they were the only groups that comprise the press, I think is hilarious. I think that's funnier than the reporting itself. And we've gotten to the point where for certain stories they become so emotionally vested in it. I mean, Acosta comes out and he acts really emotional. He's like, well, basically part of the fuck Trump crowd at this point. And people are even within the legacy media are criticizing him to some extent for his actions because he's such a fucking blowhard. He's like, well, my press pass got revoked to the White House. I am having my First Amendment rights shit on. And now CNN apparently is planning to sue. And it's like, dude, CNN has full access to the White House, although arguably they shouldn't because they are literally fake news at this point. Why don't you choose someone other than Acosta? Why not do that? You've got other reporters, right? Is Acosta the only person capable of asking a question? No? Then you're not being violated in your First Amendment rights, and that's at will anyway. The president doesn't have to issue any White House press passes. There's no law, there's no rule, there's no constitutional amendment that says that the corporate press, owned by multinational corporations with multi-million-dollar-a-year budgets and pundits that make 6 and 7 figures, shall have immediate access to the president and to his press secretary on a regular basis. It's not there. It doesn't exist. The First Amendment right of the press is the right of people to disseminate information through non-interpersonal means. Literally, the printing press is what was being referred to. Mechanical press. By the late 1700s, they were capable of printing literature at a high enough pace. Literacy was rising. It was becoming more popular. And so people rigged up presses. They were pressing literature in the private sense. It's not like there was some special legal classification for someone who was going to be a publisher. They rigged up a press. They got their stamps for their letters and their marks and all the stuff that they needed. And they got their paper, cut it to size, and put it on the press and inked it and made literature. The concept of the right to a free press was to prevent the government from coming in and saying certain literature couldn't be disseminated through that mechanical means because it was seditious or something, which almost got repealed under our second president, Adams, Alien and Sedition Act, which itself was treasonous against the concept of the First Amendment. We almost lost the First Amendment in the infancy of this nation. Thank goodness Thomas Jefferson came along, fucking reversed that shit. Greatest president, or at least one of them. Definitely in the top 3. Competing with Teddy Roosevelt and Washington and some of the other greats, I guess. But no, it has nothing to do with the right of a person with a journalism degree employed by a corporation to go to the White House and disrupt people. And that's what happened. Jim Acosta wasn't giving back the microphone to other people to allow them to ask their questions. Those are other members of the corporate press. It's not like there's a whole lot of alt media there in the room. I think Lauren Southern had a temporary press pass there for a week. She was allowed to ask a couple questions. That was pretty cool. It's the closest that the alt media has come to being recognized as truly an arm of the press itself. This is an activity of the press. I'm not speaking directly to you. I'm disseminating information via mechanical and electronic means. This is a right of the press that I'm engaged in right now. Me saying crazy shit, saying tabloid gossip spew, if that was what I was into. If I wanted to be more like CNN, and I wanted to spin everything that I said and engage in malevolent corporate propaganda and lie to people and tell them stupid shit that's objectively not true, it would be within my right, generally speaking, to do that. But if I turn around and people are like, hey, what you're talking about is actually not true. No, it's a lie. You say WikiLeaks releases are illegal to read and that they should leave it to CNN. That's an objective lie. It is incorrect reporting. It is fake news in the most literal sense. You have the right to do that, but you don't have the right to try to silence others from criticizing you when you do. See, they have the same right to disseminate information. This is what the corporate media is afraid of. They're afraid of more and more people doing this and supplanting them and pointing out when they lie because, for their corporate taskmasters, they don't want to be seen as liars. They want to be seen as astute and above board so that people trust them, as though anyone in their right mind does that anymore, regardless of what the corporation is. People still have a hard-on for Fox because they have Tucker Carlson on there. The fact that Tucker Carlson gets abused by Antifa members doesn't make him more trustworthy to me. It just means he's been victimized by a bunch of terrorists. That's all it means to me. I don't give a fuck about that. They're all corporate media goofballs. But Trump, all he has to do is grin. No context, absolutely no context at all. All he has to do is look over at Putin just arriving and smile. And that becomes front page news. It is given significant political importance, and a million tales are spun about what that grin means. It's like, remember when he was shaking Putin's hand, or Macron's hand and stuff? They did a bunch of articles, and these were being released by supposedly above-board journalistic outlets, whatever the places with journalistic ethics, whatever the fuck that means anymore. And they're speculating on what's the symbolism of the way in which he shook Macron's hand? What does it mean how he shook hands with Vladimir Putin? Here's a picture of how he shook hands with Obama. What does this show psychologically and impact our politics for the next 2 years? It doesn't make any sense. That's a bunch of hogwash. It's like, why don't you just delve into phrenology and start writing reports about that? Well, Trump's skull shape suggests that he has sexual proclivities towards urine or something, corroborating the story that he had Russian hookers pee on the Obama's bed and enjoyed it. You might as well write articles like that. It's no less believable. It's no less or more strange than what they're already writing. It's a bunch of literal bullshit. And people point this out and they get called enemies of free speech. Well, no, I mean, if you're saying things that are patently false and someone's exposing the fact that it's false, no wonder you're getting so upset. They're getting upset because it's true. They're afraid that more people will understand that it's true by digging for that info and getting it from the alt media because we're so visible. By the way, YouTube, among other sites now for certain breaking news results, automatically putting sites like ABC and NBC and Fox and CNN in the top rankings for results, no matter what the view count is, no matter what the engagement is, no matter the tags used and everything else. They've algorithmically manipulated their sites to favor the legacy media, and we're still winning. That's why they're pissed off. That's why they want to deplatform people. They've run out of other options other than trying to deprive people of a living by going after their income. Why do you think who do you think is actually giving marching orders to these craptivistic groups that seem so obsessed and yet so independent at the same time, and all they do all day is go and mass flag things and raid alt media Patreons or whatever? Who do you think is fucking telling them to do that? Who do you think's... They obviously don't have a 9-to-5 job because they do it 24/7. Who do you think's actually signing paychecks for them? Who do you think's actually giving them marching orders? Oh, I wonder if it's someone at the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times or at CNN. There's a fiscal motivation for that. We're their direct competitors now. Look at the fucking live streams that were being had on election night during the midterms. Look at the kind of viewership that some of these live streamers were getting. Individuals, little to no investment whatsoever. The cost of the laptop they'd have anyway, and the webcam and microphone. They probably invested $200-300 altogether in their entire setup. They're pulling in 10,000 live viewers. I'm sitting here, I have a little bit more, maybe organized a setup now, but still, the investment's nothing compared to what these legacy media firms spend in a single day, or in a fucking single hour on some of their pundits. They pay these people $10 million a year or more sometimes. And yet I'm sitting there pulling in 26,000 live viewers, over 250,000 watch the stream thereafter. It's insane. So yeah, no wonder they would want to deplatform people, because they spew shit like this, and it's wearing off in its usefulness. People are no longer as receptive. They browbeat them for so long with sensationalist garbage that people have become desensitized to it. Some of them worried openly about this from the get-go, but they couldn't avoid it. Like, how are they going to compete if they don't delve into the sensationalism? If all the other outlets are, they're going to peddle it too, because it's like heroin. They're addicted now. That's about all. Peace out.